I was laying down on my bed, staring at the dark brown, dull ceiling above me. Impatiently, I was practicing movements with the wand I had been given, waiting for Eleazar Fig to arrive. Professor Fig had been my tutor all summer long. When he came to visit me in the orphanage at the end of June and told me that I was allowed to attend Hogwarts starting from the 5th year, I simply couldn't believe my ears. My entire life I had thought I was a useless squib. Coming from 2 pure-blood parents, it was the most devastating thing I had ever experienced in my life. Luckily for me, both of my sisters also didn't manifest any magical powers, which made the pain of being a disappointment a bit more bearable. My powers started manifesting in April. It all started when I got into a fight with this girl at school. She was pestering me about not having any family to attend the big family feast with at the end of the school year, and at one point I just snapped, breaking all the windows at school at once. I do admit it was a bit of a shocking experience. You see, mostly when wizards and witches start manifesting powers, small, unusual things happen, but breaking all the windows of an entire school building, that was truly beyond my expectations. I couldn't help but feel like that was a sign that I would come to be a very powerful witch in the future. I stood up from my bed and picked up the family portrait that was on my bedside table, looking at it one more time before putting it in my big leather travel bag. Before I had any time to become sad about missing my family, I heard a knock on my door. Quickly, I opened the door and was met with the exact person I was hoping to see. "Professor Fig, you made it!" I exclaimed excitedly. He smiled at my enthusiasm.
Yes, and we are actually in quite a rush. Come on, put all your belongings in the carriage. We have another stop to make on our way to your new home.
Your new home. I actually liked the ring of that. I would finally not be surrounded by all these people who I was not allowed to share my ability with anymore. I couldn't wait to see Hogwarts. My parents had told me so much about it, from the Great Hall with enchanted ceiling and magnificent food, to the Slytherin common room that had a shiny metal snake in front of the entrance, to all of their classes like potions and flying. I always thought I would never get to see any of it, and that I would just have to fantasize based on the stories they told me. But today was finally the day. I was going to see Hogwarts. While the thought of that truly made me happy, I also got a bit sad at the same time. I wish my sisters would have been here to see it. Me and Fig walked outside with my luggage and put everything in the carriage.
Are you ready?
He asked me. I took one last look at the orphanage that I had lived in for the past 2 years, and then looked back at Professor Fig. "I'm ready," I gave him a confident look.
Very well then.
He opened the carriage door for me, and right before we were about to leave, a man apparated in front of us.
Ah, George, I'm glad my rather cryptic description of our location did not thwart your finding us.
Fig said with a smile and shook the man's hand.
Don't worry, my friend. I've apparated to far more vaguely defined destinations than this.
The man, whose name seemed to be George Osric, chuckled in return.
Now I think it's best if we leave quickly, if your companion here doesn't mind me tagging along.
He said, looking in my direction. Professor Fig shook his head.
No, I don't think our new student would mind.
Very well. Let's go then.
George answered, and we left for our very special and eventful journey. What could have been a normal journey to Hogwarts turned out to be so much more than that. From our carriage getting attacked by an enchanted dragon, to Mr. Osric dying, to finding out I can see traces of ancient magic, to visiting Gringotts Bank for the first time and meeting Ranrock, who happened to be an evil goblin. It was certainly not what I had expected. Only moments ago, me and Professor Fig were still in the same room as the goblin Ranrock. It was a very special room, decorated beautifully with a lot of blue and silver details, and built using ancient magic. There was a pensive in it, accompanied with a locket, and what seemed to be a very important memory about 2 wizards talking about keeping the ancient magic a secret. The same kind of magic that I had just learned I could see traces of. Whatever was waiting for me now, I certainly knew that I was going to have to prepare for an eventful year. When Ranrock attacked us back at Gringotts, the pensive room started to collapse. The floor became liquid and wobbly, and every pillar was being destroyed. What was a beautiful room seconds ago was now turning into a ruin. Luckily, me and Professor Fig had made it out just in time, using a special portal gate that we had encountered in the room. We stood outside for a second, trying to catch our breath.
Well, whatever that was, it wanted someone with your ability to come to this particular place.
Fig suddenly spoke up, as if I was supposed to know where exactly we were.
Come, we have a sorting ceremony to get to.
He continued as he started walking, urging me to follow him. Not even a minute later I could see it. A magnificent castle with lots of towers and big walls to protect it. It was Hogwarts. The pensive room had led us to Hogwarts. It was truly better than anything I could have ever imagined. My parents hadn't exaggerated one bit about the beauty of the building. It felt more like a royal palace than a school building, if you asked me. I couldn't help but gasp at the sight of it, which Professor Fig seemed to notice.
I see you're very impressed. Come now, we don't want to be late for your sorting, do we?
A few minutes later, we were standing in the Great Hall, only moments away from me being sorted into my proper house. I had waited for this day since I was born. I suddenly felt a flash of nerves running through me. What house would I be assigned to? What if I wouldn't be the same house as my parents? Professor Fig softly flicked his wand, transforming my travel clothes into proper Hogwarts robes.
Well, I need to further study this locket that we found in the pensive room and alert the Ministry as soon as I can. It's best if you keep everything we saw today between us for now. Good luck with your sorting.
Fig spoke and turned around to leave the Great Hall. I didn't even have a proper chance to say goodbye, as a tall, black-haired figure was walking towards me.
Greetings, I am Mr. Black, your headmaster. You must be the new 5th year. I see that punctuality is not your strongest feature, but for once I'm willing to turn a blind eye. Let's get you sorted straight away.
The man accompanied me to the very front of the Great Hall, where a light brown-haired witch, presumably another professor, was standing. She had a very old and worn-out hat in her hands, which I could only assume was the infamous sorting hat. My hands started sweating from all the nerves, and I had trouble breathing properly. Every single step I took brought me one step closer to all of this actually being real. The lady smiled at me and urged me to sit down on the small wooden stool next to her. As I sat down, I finally realized where I was and how many other people were in the same room as me. Everyone's eyes were focused on me, and they seemed to whisper to each other. I could only make out the words 5th year and dragon. Every other sound was selectively not entering my eardrums. The professor next to me put the sorting hat on top of my head, immediately making it speak.
Ah, a bit older than the others, aren't you?
The hat began his monologue.
I see. A deep sense of loyalty. Perhaps you would make a great fit for Hufflepuff.
When I heard the word Hufflepuff, I immediately felt a sense of disappointment. I wanted to make my parents proud by being in the same house as theirs. I thought the hat had already decided, but to my surprise, the hat was not done talking.
I also feel wisdom. It seems you're a bright witch. Perhaps Ravenclaw. But no, you are brave and fierce. Not the type to run away from a fight. Godric Gryffindor would be most pleased to have you in his house.
It seemed the hat was going over every single house name, except for Slytherin, the one that I had hoped to get. The hat seemed to be thinking what felt like forever about what decision he would make.
Better be. Wait, I see it now. A strong ambition. You want to be better than the normal student, don't you? And I see some cunning in you as well. Very well. I've made my decision. Better be Slytherin.
My heart skipped a beat out of relief. I couldn't help but smile widely, thinking of how proud my parents would be to hear that I'm in Slytherin. As I stood up, my robes changed colour. The badge on the front became my house symbol, a snake, and the purple inside of the robe turned a darkish green colour, almost exactly like my eyes. The professor next to me gave a nod of approval and motioned me to make my way to my house table on the right. I went to sit at the table, between the people who seemed to be somewhat my age. They all cheered for me and gave me handshakes as a way of calling me welcome. One of the people at our table had particularly caught my attention. It was a handsome boy who seemed to be my age. He had brown, dishevelled hair, chocolate-coloured eyes, and a lot of freckles on his face. I caught him staring at me, and when our eyes met, I couldn't help but blush a little. After dinner, the professor who was next to me during the sorting took me apart.
Good evening. Eve was the name, right? I'm Professor Weasley, Deputy Headmistress and Transfiguration Teacher at Hogwarts. Let me show you to your common room,
she said with a bright smile. Thank you very much, Professor. She led the way to the Slytherin common room, which was a far and long way down in the castle. Our common room was situated in a dungeon.
There.
Professor Weasley spoke up.
This is the entrance to the Slytherin common room. In order to enter, one must simply speak the correct password, aspiration.
Very well. Aspiration. As soon as I said that, a metallic snake was curling up against the wall of the dungeon, making a door appear.
Good. Now enter and get some rest. I'll be back here to collect you for your classes tomorrow,
she said, and walked away. I entered the common room, which was truly ginormous. There was green everywhere. The room was decorated with lots of fireplaces, couches, curtains, and lamps. The room gave a bit of a cold feeling, but it fit well. There were still a lot of students out of their beds, which was the perfect opportunity for me to go and meet some people. The first person I met was a girl named Imelda Reyes. She had dark brown hair and was overall a nice person. However, she did seem a bit proud, which made her come across as cocky. I couldn't tell yet whether she could be a potential friend or a nuisance. The second person I met was a blind boy named Ominous Gaunt. He was taunting some other Slytherins, making them believe that if they stood by the window, which had an underwater view long enough, they would see mermaids. In contrary to his little prank, though, he was very nice, and even proposed to help me with my work if I had difficulties. When I finished talking to Ominous, I saw the handsome guy that was staring at me in the Great Hall just an hour before. I decided to introduce myself to him, as he wasn't just handsome, but also looked like a very friendly person. As I was walking towards him, he put the book he was reading down.
Can I help you?
He asked, but then the realization seemed to hit him.
Ah, you're the new 5th year. I'm Sebastian Sallow. Welcome to Slytherin.
Thank you, I'm Eve. He seemed to smile a bit at the sound of my name.
Not everyone has a ministry escort to school.
He was talking about Mr. Osric, who had died during my travel here. He was a friend of Professor Fig's, who merely joined us for the ride.
Still, impressive. Dreadful way to go, poor fellow. Glad you and Fig are all right.
I suppose me and Professor Fig were very lucky to escape with our lives, I confessed.
Indeed. And how did you escape?
He asked, seemingly a bit intrigued. It's all still a bit of a blur, to be honest.
All right. Didn't mean to press. You just get yourself settled. We can talk more later.
Yes, thank you. I'll go ahead and get to my room then. It was nice meeting you, Sebastian. I greeted him with a smile and walked away towards my room. I plopped down on my bed and stared at the ceiling. I couldn't believe that my magical journey was actually starting.